Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, Ivey takes heat. Also, former Governor Robert Bentley gets a pass on his shenanigans. And Attorney General Steve Marshall makes a crooked deal.
Say, I haven't seen a house out here for miles. What are you doing out in the middle of nowhere?
Well, I had to be at that there crossroads last midnight. Sell my soul to the devil.
Well, ain't it a small world, spiritually speaking? Pete and Delmer just been baptized and saved. I guess I'm the only one that remains unaffiliated.
Deal with the devil? I thought it was just with a fool. You know, Robert Bentley. Ha! That's Dave. He's a crafty one. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. To The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V team. Welcome.
And I'm outnumbered again.
You are outnumbered, but
well, you know.
you are the rose among the thorns, my dear.
That's true. A lot of thorns here.
Yeah, well, you know, this week, as to quote Chevy Chase, when they handed down the Bentley verdict chip, I couldn't have been more amazed if I'd have woke up with my head stapled to the carpet. I mean, they just said if you're governor, you can use law enforcement to threaten people, to intimidate, to investigate, to threaten your own family, and that's okay.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what they said. Couldn't prosecute Dr. Bentley because it's not in the ethics law. It doesn't cover non-spousal relationships, apparently. If you appoint the ALEA secretary, you can do whatever you want with them, tell them to investigate whoever. And
you can get the 501c4, pay your girlfriend to be your assistant. Yeah.
So you can get a hoe and install her in, I mean, not theoretically, get a hoe, install her in the governor's office and pay her out of some hoochie mama secret fund, and that's cool, Josh.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you're not talking about the garden instrument there. I mean, it's like a mob. I mean, really, it's like you can direct you can direct ALEA and law enforcement to go after your enemies. You can employ your girlfriend.
And she doesn't even file a statement of economic interest because they're not
husband and wife.
Well, the only reason I brought up the garden instrument, by the way, is because Tom Albritton keeps telling us that sex isn't a thing of value, so that's what I'm talking about here.
Well, when you got your own mud cricket, it's not.
But I mean, really, in all seriousness, it was the most outrageous thing I had ever heard, because here you have a governor who was lawless, and he is not going to get even a scratch, Susan.
Not even a slap on the wrist.
Doing all that he did.
He did some horrendous things. He used law enforcement resources to try to track down the tape. He spent our taxpayer dollars on paying all these people to run these, tried to get Spencer Collier to go arrest his daughter-in-law. Yeah. You know, woke some woman up in the middle of the night over the tapes.
And this is about the second or third time that we've had a government body, either a grand jury or a House impeachment committee, come out and say that, yes, he did this, but there's just not anything to do about it, apparently. And, you know, that's exactly what they said in the impeachment report from their special counsel, was that he was using state resources to go after people that found out about his affair. And like people have said before, it wasn't the affair that brought him down, it was the cover-up.
Well, I tell you, you know, if he had just not done anything, if he just stayed pat, he'd still be governor.
Yeah, and that really is true. I mean, if you think back about it, if he had not pleaded guilty to these things, I think he would still be governor and there would be no problems. I mean, of course, everyone would be supremely unhappy with him, as they were. Yeah. But at the same time, he would be facing no legal consequences, and he wouldn't have gone through the arrest and got that free, mugshot and fingerprint.
Yeah. I mean, you know, the disgrace of the state now, I think, is even greater, because we not only have had a governor who disgraced the state. But guess what? Our legal system says it's okay. Yeah, it's fine.
Well, and in their defense, I mean, I think they tried desperately to do something here, but and at the end of that, they didn't have to put out that statement that said, here's our problem. Please fix this, because there was nothing we could do legally to hold this guy accountable for the things he did.
And I've talked to several attorneys about this, and they've all said this is so unusual for a grand jury to come out and say something like that, put out a statement like that, basically begging the legislature to change the law because they couldn't do anything, and it was just so disturbing.
What legislature in their right mind is
the
going
same
to
legislature
try to tick off a sitting governor by saying, okay, right, well, we're going to come in here and limit your powers?
Well, but I mean, the crazy thing, okay, let's give them credit, they released that. Well, why didn't they release what they found Bentley actually did wrong? I mean, not wrong, but all the findings. I mean, they gave us the things that were they said you need to fix it.
Can they do that? I don't think they can under the Grand Jury Secrecy Act.
I think that's what Ellen Brooks was hinting at in the whole thing. Is she said, don't take any of this to be confirmation that he did any of this, but these are the things you need to change.
Well, I still think. Well, the good news is Kenny Mendelsohn, the attorney for Spencer Collier, who he fired and treated like a human, garbage can.
It's still doing so.
Is going to have the opportunity to depose Governor Robert Bentley, Susan.
I want a front row seat.
Yeah.
I want to rent the Davis Theater and sell tickets.
Well, and the thing is he cannot. There's nothing.
Wouldn't be the first time.
There's nothing to keep them now from asking him about his affair, about all kinds of stuff. There's nothing that you can't cover in a deposition.
And I'm going to assume that they can also now depose Rebecca Mason.
I would think so.
Because, I mean, she's been protected because this was still ongoing.
Unless there's some other investigation.
Yeah, unless there's some other investigation, and we'll find out pretty soon whether or not that's the case.
Well, I think, and like O.J. Simpson, they didn't find him guilty in criminal court, but boy, they sure took him to task, Susan, in civil court.
Right, and the civil court requirements are not as stringent as criminal court. And understand, when he goes under deposition, it's all holes barred. They can still ask him anything about anything.
Well, and Chip, Kenny Mendelsohn is a smart attorney. If the state had some smart attorneys, they'd hustle up and settle with with Spencer Collier. But they have really played Spencer like he's an idiot. I mean, they refused to pay him. They refused to acknowledge he was mistreated, and now the courts have done the same. But the good news is,
I mean, it's going to move forward. That's the good news. That's what the Supreme Court said this week, and we will find out all of that stuff, I think, and that's what Kenny Mendelsohn told me, is that the truth is going to come out. They've tried to paint Spencer Collier as having an affair. They tried to say he had a history of sexual assault. They tried to accuse him of stealing things and misusing state resources. And those same witnesses that were in this, don't forget this all goes back to that Aaliyah report. Right. Those same witnesses, and that some of them are going to testify that they were misquoted, that their quotes were taken out of context, or that it was all fabricated altogether.
And let's not forget the drug test that came back after he had the wreck. They sped it up. I think it came back like 3 days later, which any other drug case in the state is out waiting 6 to 8 months. They sped that up, and that's going to come out in this court case.
Well, I tell you, the governor's office has allowed this thing to go forward because they don't want to give Spencer a dime. They don't want to lose. And before Governor Kay Ivey became Governor Kay Ivey, her team met with Spencer Collier and said, we want to help you, we want to get this behind us, and they have done nothing, Josh.
Yeah, and it's it's been a shame the way this has all gone here. And no matter what side you're on, I think what people need to look at is what just the basics of this are and what people have done involved in this. And just imagine, it could be you. I mean, and if you want good qualified people to go into these public service roles. This is not the way to go about getting them.
No, it's not. We're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and analysis.
Autism has touched the lives of so many here in Alabama. It's why State Senator Tom Whatley stood up to the special interests and sponsored the bill requiring insurance plans to provide autism therapy to those in need. because Tom Whatley knows this therapy can and does change lives. And Whatley was recently recognized by the Autism Society of Alabama for his work helping the autism community. Putting people before politics. Tom Whatley.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Josh, you started a research project several weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, in which we were looking for why Robert Bentley appointed Steve Marshall Attorney General. You were at the archives, the Alabama archives, and you found what appeared to be the first in a long series of information that we discovered that tells us exactly why Robert Bentley wanted Steve Marshall.
Yeah, and heads up Steve Marshall, this segment's going to sting a little bit. So apparently when Steve Marshall was the DA in Marshall County, he was the recipient, according to several sources that we talked to, he was approached by Bentley or some of Bentley's affiliates here and asked if he would be willing to accept the AG's position in exchange for going after the prosecutors in the AG's office who were investigating Mike Hubbard and who were on the trail of Robert Bentley and Rebecca Mason and the misspent money and things of that nature. And this little deal was apparently shopped around to several DAs and other attorneys around, and a lot of people turned it down. Steve Marshall, according to sources, did not. And so therefore, that's why he's sitting in the seat today.
And after Robert Bentley interviewed Steve Marshall for the first time, which we'll get to that date, our sources, and we have two very good sources, one who was basically in the room, said, now we have our guy to go after rogue prosecutors, meaning Matt Hart and Van Davis, who successfully prosecuted Mike Hubbard, and somehow Rebecca Mason became obsessed with that they were going to investigate her and Robert Bentley. And Robert said in an open meeting, he said, he can't get, why is he trying to get Precious Becca, which was his pet name for his paramour, Rebecca Caldwell Mason. But the dates are important, Susan.
The dates are important because Josh went down and looked in the archive, and we found some of his itineraries. Well, he has a February 8th itinerary in which he was having meetings with several people not related to the Attorney General's office, except for Steve Marshall had an 8 o'clock appointment that morning. The next day, February the 9th, is when he started officially interviewing for the AG's position, and I believe when he appointed Luther Strange AG that day.
No, he appointed him to take place, Sessions' place as the
I'm sorry, as Sessions' place as a U.S. Senator. But anyway, so again, now here we see Steve Marshall on the itinerary at 5 o'clock after Alice Martin. The following day, which was February the 10th, he finished up those interviews, and within 4 hours after the last interview, he tweeted out that at 6:09, it was 6:08, that Steve Marshall would be the new Attorney General.
So our understanding is that some of Bentley's people originally met with Steve Marshall. He came in, Chip, he interviewed with Bentley at 8 a.m. on the 9th?
The 8th.
And then a day later, it took off, blah, 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 blah. And you and I each talked to people who said that Bentley had just finished talking to them and they were in their cars and had not made it home before he announced Steve Marshall as AG. Sounded like the cake was baked.
Yeah, pretty much. And Steve Marshall was the only one that had a meeting with Robert Bentley before he started the actual interviews for the position. And then, like you said, we talked to several lawmakers who were being considered for the position who said that they just got out of their meeting. They, met with him about the possibility of taking the job, and on their way home, they found out from one source or another that they had pick Steve Marshall.
Yeah, and, and all of that is kind of supporting documentation to just to the sources that we have who were, as you said, one person was essentially in the room when a lot of this was going on, and it's not a matter of, this is just kind of things that tie it all together. But we had this from people who were very, very close to this situation and what was going on, and and it connects a lot of dots, I think, for people about what's taking place and what took place in the AG's office that we've heard, through back channels and other things.
Right.
And all of this plays back into the whole theory that people have had since the beginning, that Luther Strange was appointed to the U.S. Senate to get him out of the Attorney General's office, and then they're going to pick somebody that can cover up the investigation. And that was all of what you see it play out. I'm not saying that it was a quid pro quo, but it sure looks like it when you have the charges that he took, the plea bargain that he took was for 30 days in jail that was suspended and a few $1,000s in fines.
And add to that, Luther Strange said, I never said there was an investigation into Robert Bentley when we all knew there was. And he said that on his way out.
But, and this thing all of this goes back to the Hubbard case. Mike Hubbard's cronies put out this false report that Matt Hart and Van Davis had a hit list of people that they were going to investigate after they got Hubbard. And they told several people, including Rebecca Mason, that they were on the list. And Josh, this is a case of getting the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right.
They wanted people to turn on Hart, and they did.
Yeah, and and if you look back through the history of that case, and let's not take because I think people have a tendency to separate out a lot of this stuff, but look at everything kind of together. And if you notice through the course of that Hubbard case, how many people that they went after, the people in the AG's office that had to be fired because the Hubbard folks were going after them and trying to get them to turn over evidence and do shady things like that. This was a tactic that they used all the way through this whole thing here, and they had kind of infiltrated the AG's office at that time, and they were doing the same thing with the governor's office. They wanted desperately to get Bentley and them on their side on this so they could throw a wrench into the whole investigation.
Steve Marshall has received big donations from what we call the unindicted co-conspirators in the Mike Hubbard case. We have on record a Bentley staffer saying that Jimmy Raine cornered Bentley and offered him big dollars if he would have get somebody like a Steve Marshall to be the special prosecutor and get rid of Hart and Davis. I tell you what he has done, Susan, he never launched an investigation, but piece by piece he has dismantled the office of the Special Prosecutions Division, and basically they've been reduced to nothing because Steve Marshall is keeping his promise, maybe not to Robert Bentley, but to the big mules, big business owners.
Well, he's kind of keeping his promise to Robert Bentley when Bentley got a pretty soft landing this week, too.
Yeah, he did.
This all ties together, people.
Yeah, and it is. You wish you could go a little further and tell people, what you know, because, to tie things up, but you can't, because you got to protect the sources that you have. And I mean, the promises of some of those paydays and things, and it's come to fruition, and it is. This is exactly what's playing out. Look through his campaign finances. Just go on there and look through them, all right?
I mean, we're going to have to hold it there, but $100,000 past week from BCA's Billy Canary.
And a surprise $2,500 coming your way.
All right, you're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and analysis.
The Energy Institute of Alabama promotes reliable, affordable, and clean energy to help grow our economy, create high-paying jobs, and build public support for Alabama's energy industry. Access to clean, affordable energy continues to be an issue of vital importance in the halls of government and around the kitchen tables across our nation. The Energy Institute of Alabama is the best source of energy industry information and how it affects households across the state, from convenient energy production to alternative fuels to solar power and beyond.
Welcome back to The Beat, the voice of Alabama politics. I don't want to turn this into all Marshall all the time. I don't think
he's a gift that keeps on giving,
yeah,
I gotta tell you.
He's not worth 2 segments on the show, but we really need to get to the fact that this week he received $100,000, or last week, the day after session ended, he had helped push through a bill that weakened the ethics laws, and then he got a $100,000 payday, Susan.
On March the 30th, he got a $100,000 payment from Progress PAC, which everybody knows is BCA money.
Well, that is absolutely, it's their PAC.
It's their PAC.
I've never seen an AG push for a law that weakens laws like that. I've seen them go over and push for things that strengthens the death penalty and strengthens prosecutions and gets people more of longer sentences for crimes and things like that. That happens all the time. Yeah. I've never seen anything like that. And maybe somebody could point it out to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't remember in all the time covering the legislature any AG going over and pushing for something like this.
Well, and something else we reported, I think you reported, is that Steve Marshall took $2,500 last month from Rob Riley's attorney. I mean his office.
Yeah. Riley Jackson, it's right there.
He's representing Mike Hubbard,
yeah,
who's got an appeal against his office right now.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Took $2,500.
Chip, can you? Only in Alabama would an AG take money from people under appeal.
It's not the first time. I mean, we saw the money going through the PACs from Drummond and all of the other people involved in the Superfund site. This is not new, and this is not even counting all the money that he gets out of state from the Republican Attorney General's Association.
He's got $250,000. By the way, one of which, the last payment he got from them was also on the 30th. Mm-hmm. Let's not forget that. Yeah. He's 49% of all the money he's taken in, which is $1.3 million. 49% of that is PAC money.
Wait. Just $1.3 million.
$1.3 million.
For the Attorney General in the state of Alabama, and we're in April.
Mm-hmm. It looks like, I think he's not so much as being bought as being rewarded.
Yeah, maybe so.
That's what it sounds like to me.
God bless him.
I'm going to bring up one more thing about Steve, and then we're going to let this go. But no matter how you feel about the death penalty, Steve Marshall has entered into a confidential agreement with the attorneys for Doyle Lee Ham, a convicted murderer, convicted and sentenced to death. Mm-hmm. He has entered into an agreement whereby, Susan, he is basically commuting Doyle Ham's sentence from death to life.
Right. Well, because they couldn't find enough veins in Mr. Ham's arms to administer the lethal injection, never mind, it wasn't the state's.
Although they tried.
They tried. Basically, what Marshall is doing is not reissuing the death warrant, essentially commuting his sentence to life in jail. He does not have that authority. Only the governor of the state of Alabama has the authority to commute a sentence.
And we've talked to the governor. Gov Ivey says she did not commute his sentence. I mean, Chip, it doesn't matter how you feel about the death penalty. It matters how you feel about the rule of law.
Yeah, there's some weird things about this. First, how is this confidential? I don't understand that when this is a state death penalty case. I mean, those should get all the attention in the world, number one. And number two, how can he not issue the death sentence or the death warrant? Because does the Supreme Court not do that? I'm confused about how.
Well, he has to ask for it.
He has to ask for it.
It doesn't make sense how he can do this and how you can go into an agreement like that.
I think most of us here, at least, I don't know how everybody else feels, but I'm not unpleased that they're not going to kill somebody else in the state. But I would like for the AG to follow the law, and because there's a way to do this. There's a proper way to do this, and what you worry is that it's going to be messed up in some way where this is going to get screwed up.
Publicly ask Gov Ivey to commute the sentence.
Right.
If you think it's not, it's down the road, people, down the road. Where else are they going to start bending these laws?
Well, what I'm saying is, no matter how you feel about the death penalty, whether you approve or not, right now, someone could challenge his standing to basically commute, and therefore the execution of Mr. Ham would go forward.
Let's just think. This is a way to cut corners. I mean, that's all it is.
Yeah.
You could have done this, and you could carry out the case, or you could get Governor Ivey to commute it. And is this going to happen in the future every time he doesn't want to?
Well, this guy has no respect for the rule of law. He is holding up cases within his own office. He is basically destroying the morale and the ability of the prosecutors to do their job. I mean, all those of us who know people that worked at the AG's office for years, they're quitting in droves because they can't stand this guy. And it's not because he's a tough boss, it's because he's a crooked boss. He's a cheat.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are tough out there that you continue to work for. There's not a lot of people who you don't respect that you continue to work for.
They don't. Well, I tell you, Kay Ivey took a lot of hits this week. Walt Maddox got after her. Democratic gubernatorial hopeful Chip got after her over the weakening of the ethics law. And then Tommy Battle, Republican, Huntsville mayor, who's running against Kay, he criticized her for not wanting to debate.
Yeah. Steve Marshall was not the only person pushing HB 317. Kay Ivey was pushing. Her office was pushing it too, and she got that pushback from Walt Maddox this week and last week, who said, veto this. It's a weakening of the ethics law. It's unneeded. It's going to result in all kind of mischief. And then, like you said, Tommy Battle and the other gubernatorial candidates, for that matter, are wondering where she's at on these debates.
And
why is she
so.
not appearing in public?
Yeah, I mean, debate.
Well, I mean, I like Kay Ivey. So far, she hasn't done anything wrong. But she's going to have to address the people, Susan.
Yes, she's going to have to address the people. From our understanding, there are people in Birmingham right now hanging out their shingle for $50,000. You can get whatever legislation you want under this bill.
Oh yeah. Well, they like the cheats love HB 317. Yeah. We only got about a minute here. I do want to commend Governor Ivey. This week we mark the 50th anniversary, sadly, of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. No matter how you may feel about him one way or the other, he is an icon of a civil rights era and an icon of what's best in our nation. But his death was what's the worst of our nation. Josh, we only got about 20 seconds. What do you think?
I commend her for passing the resolution and ringing the bell, and it was a pretty low-key celebration around the state for a guy who led two of the most successful protests in the history of America through this state. Yeah. And started at a church that's about an 8-iron from the Capitol.
Well, we still are a racist state on many levels, so I guess that's it.
That works.
And there are people who think he's a communist and all this, but we honor Dr. King in life and in death. You've been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.